Hello? Sorry about that, guys. I am brand new to this. This is the first time I've ever done this as, the person running the stream. So thank you very much for bearing with me. Um, I will put a timestamp in the uh, description so you don't have to watch and listen to just 5 minutes of nothing. Hi, Marianne. We're waiting for Otangelo. Um, and I don't know. I had told him um, noon, and then Knock got hold of him. Nakasuchi, uh, the Rage, got hold of him and said that he had to move back his stream that Otangelo was going to go to. So Otangelo contacted me and said, we can do 2 year time. And um, then I got back with him and said, no, noon is fine. And so now I'm just seeing if you know, if he's going to be able to show up or not. If not, I can do a stream alone. That's fine. It's really not any big deal. Um, but anyway, I am using StreamYards, and it's the first time I've done this, so it's pretty. It's pretty. It's pretty easy to use, but uh, I just I'm not very good when it comes to computers. I can basically use computers, but when it comes to trying out new software, that's something totally different. So anyway, um, let me check to see if Otangelo is coming. Um, anyway, um, aside from that, Marianne, how are you doing? Otangelo, by the way, is a Christian. I don't know if you um, know that or not. I'm not sure. Like you go to Nakasuchi's streams or not. So he is a Christian. He wanted to speak with me, so I gave him a good. I told him he could do it on my channel, and he has not replied to me yet, but hoping he will come in. Um, So if not, this is a good learning experience for me. At least I know how to use this thing now. Like I said, it's pretty easy to use. Uh, Paul, I was just telling Marianne, uh, I don't know if he's coming or not. I told him noon, because, um, he was gonna go on, the Rage at like 4, and then, Nakasuchi, who is the Rage, uh, pushed it back. So, he got in contact with me and said, what about 2 p.m. today? And so I got back with him, and he has not gotten back with me yet. So uh, let me see if he has. Okay. Hi, Free Spirit. Uh, Waiting on Otangelo. I was just explaining. Not sure if he's gonna come or not. Marianne, we just had TV dinners. Might as well. I mean, with the virus and all that. Um, but I'm trying to see if he's going to contact me. Uh, or if he's just going to click the link I sent him. But if he doesn't come in, somebody else is more than welcome. If somebody else would like to come in, um, I'll post the link in the chat. Hopefully. I've never done this either. Cross your fingers. Hopefully that's clickable for you. So, in general, this can be an open room because Otangelo isn't here yet. But in general, these types of streams, I won't be doing an open room. Um, just because, um, oh, thank you, Paul. Um, just because I prefer one on ones. Um, I'm I come from a background in psychology and mental health. So one on ones is, a bit my style, a bit more my style. But I think today I may have an open room, just please. Um, I I know you guys like the dumpster fires in Knox room in his open rooms. I know you guys like that. That's what you go for. Uh, but I would appreciate if um, No, Fifth, you can come in. Um, I would appreciate it if we would all be respectful. I don't know. Um, I know some people are atheists. The fifth trumpet, I'm assuming from your screen name that you are a Christian. Uh, so I just want everybody to be respectful. No dumpster fires. Just come in and talk. And, okay. Um, okay. The fifth trumpet. Never mind, I got you.
Hi,
Uh,
hi. How's it
Hey,
going?
pretty good. How are you?
Uh, good, I guess. Just kicking back today.
Cool, cool.
So I know you said Otangelo didn't make it or something. Maybe he didn't know what time or whatever.
Well, no, we kind of he he's going on Knox channel. Do you know the Rage?
Yeah,
Okay. Well, he was going to go on Knox channel about 4, and he didn't want to come on about 2 on my channel because that would like be too close for him. But then Knock contacted him and said, I'm going to push it back. So he contacted me and he said, well, we can do your time now. And I'm like, no, we can go ahead and do noon if you want. So anyway, um, and that's where we are right now.
yeah.
So
Well, go ahead.
I'm assuming from your name you're a Christian.
Yeah, I'm Christian.
Okay. Uh, what flavor?
What flavor?
Evangelical, Catholic.
I'm non-denominational,
Okay.
which I guess that just means straight Bible. Uh, yeah. I mean,
So are you a Trinitarian then?
Am I Trinitarian? Well, that's a tricky thing to say because yeah, I mean you can say Trinity, and that might be perfectly valid, but the this meaning or this definition that is attached to it, I wouldn't subscribe to that completely. No, but don't get me wrong. Yes, there are three things. There are many more than three things. There's all sorts of terms that are used. Um,
Okay.
So the
Well,
standard Trinitarian, I would have to say no, because I don't subscribe to that definition.
so what would you define the Trinity as?
Well, like I said, you have the term Son of God, you have the term Father, you have the term Most High, you have the term Anointed Savior. You have many, 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 many terms. Do I think these are different people? No, I don't. I think it's one person. But then it comes to the question of, well, how is this person sitting on the throne yet also walking on earth? They're in two places at the same time, and I don't have a problem with that. I would still say, yeah, that's one person, not two.
Okay. I always hey Marianne.
Hey,
I always, even when I was a quote unquote Trinitarian, I always had a problem with that concept because I'm like, how can God? I mean, they're like, well, God's God, but I'm like, well, you know, uh, he still can't defy the laws of physics.
Well,
But
but wait a minute.
Uh
When you're
huh.
dealing with the spiritual realm, you're dealing with higher dimensions. And not only that, biblically, the Holy Spirit dwells in many places. It doesn't dwell in one spot. It lives in many different people all over the place. So that's why I'm saying I don't see a problem with the being in two places at the same time, because, like I was saying, there's a higher dimensions that are involved. Like, yeah, you're right. You and I, we can't be in two places at the same time.
Well, the spirit I can see because it's like a nebulous kind of thing. But with the Father and the Son, that's another issue altogether, if you get my drift.
Well, uh, uh, like now okay. I'm just from how I think. Biblically, what is your true self? Is it your flesh or is it your spirit? If you had to make a choice, it's your spirit, biblically speaking.
Okay.
So if your true
Careful, girl.
person is the spirit,
He's
and that spirit is able to live in many different places, again, I'm not seeing a problem with doing
Okay. Well, I'm an agnostic, so I don't accept that we're spirit, but I accept that you accept that we're spirit.
that. Yeah.
So, I don't have a problem with that.
I
Uh,
wanted to ask you something though.
what?
I wanted to ask you something.
Sure.
Well, I saw you yesterday. You were looking at Genesis 18 and 19.
Uh huh.
I mean, so I'm familiar with at least at 19, and I just thought it was interesting your comments like this doesn't make sense. But I also wondered what version were you reading? What translation?
Yeah, I was reading from the NIV
Oh, really? Okay.
because the KJV isn't really a very good version. Well, none of them really are a very good version. They're not really. Uh, something gets lost in translation,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that's just languages,
Yeah.
you know. Marion,
So
how about you hop in here?
Can you hear me at all? Because I've never tried this thing before.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, perfect. Um, well, you know my story, Lisa. I was raised a JW. My parents were baptized when I was like 3. So I was one of those. I feel like either when you leave something like that, you either join another hardcore religion or you become an atheist. And I went the atheist route. Um,
I know a lot of JWs like that.
yeah, I guess because in my and the way I found it, um, the God that my parents said existed, I really want no part of.
Right.
Um, I like the fact of using my own mind, making my own decisions, and not. Also, of course, the misogyny was awful. So I like the fact that I could take control of my own life,
Yeah.
and that's kind of the way I went. And I just never saw anything that would make me think there was anything better out there than just doing the best that you can do every day and being the best person that you can be every day.
Right. Right.
I guess that's a simplistic way of looking at it, but that's just where I come from. And sorry if I'm on the move here, but I have my dogs out here and they're kind of walking around the house with me.
Oh, it's okay. No big deal. So Fifth, do you have anything to
yeah,
say to that?
I do because I mean I don't want to say the wrong thing, but
You
I
can't say,
mean,
as long as you're respectful, you cannot say the wrong thing on this channel.
well, I might be unintentionally saying something bad, but I guess what my only point would be, I mean, a couple points. One, I mean, I see a lot of people in your camp that are anti-Christian or whatever. I wonder, like, it's not necessarily the Bible they're a problem with, it's the church. It's this system that they're associated with. And like when you talk about the JW or the Jehovah's Witness, I mean, I went to them a couple times, and I wouldn't have anything to do with them. I mean, in my opinion, they're ridiculous. So I kind of feel sorry for people who have taken that as solid truth and then found out that it was silly or dumb or not totally biblical. And then you're blaming God or you're blaming the Bible and saying this whole thing is a joke. I mean, I don't know what your story is, but that's what I kind of see sometimes with people and what they say.
I guess I just never felt that it was anything that was ever needed in my life. Um, if I have a problem, I solve it or I wait until I can solve it. And I just never found it's kind of the way I went. Again, very simplistic, but that's just the way I feel. And haven't had anybody be able to,
Yeah,
I'm doing okay.
yeah, yeah.
That's what it's
Well,
all about.
that's the other point I would make is that's fine. If you don't want to be a part of it, you don't have to. It's not a problem.
Good girl, Ruby.
Yeah. Well, we just know a lot of Christians who are judgmental, and they're like, well, not the JWs, because the JWs don't believe in hell,
No,
but
they don't. You're right about that.
I was part of the Independent Fundamentalist Baptist Church, and then um, Otangelo is going to join us in about 20 minutes. Uh,
Okie dokie.
and then um, and then we switched from. This was when I was young. I pretty much grew up in the Independent Fundamentalist Baptist Church until I was like uh 12 or something. And then my mom decided to switch to the Southern Baptist Church. And that was a kind of a culture shock because the Southern Baptists are a bit more permissible in way of women can wear jeans and stuff like that, but they're still pretty conservative. So, and then I started learning about stuff like evolution and, the Big Bang. And um, I just, I, I was mad. I still am mad because I got lied to for most of my life. Um, I think a lot of agnostics and atheists are where I am right now because we got lied to. You know, I think maybe if they had said, "Yeah, we evolution and the Big Bang," well, sure, we don't have any problem with that, but God did it. I mean, I don't know. I can't say whether I would still be part of a church if I had been brought up that way, but I was not brought up that way. In fact, I was brought up as a young earth creationist, which is totally ridiculous when you learn about evolution and geology and all that
Lisa,
good stuff.
Lisa, could I just make a comment about something you just said?
Sure.
It's my husband and I have two kids. I mean, they're in their late teens, early 20s now, but we never took them to any kind of religious services except, if something was going on in the family, like a wedding or something like that. Never really talked much about it. And not too long ago, I asked him, well, what do you guys think about religion? And my son said that he's an agnostic, and my daughter said she's an atheist. So it
Hmm.
just goes to show you that technically, in a way, we're born not believing. We have to be taught usually pretty young, to believe in something like that. So I think they're really, they're really good examples. Oh, there goes my dogs. they're really good examples of when you don't raise children to believe in things that's the way they're probably going to wind up growing up and being. So that just goes to show you.
Right. Jay, I'm not talking about my parents.
Go
I know
ahead.
my parents honestly believed. I'm talking about the leaders.
Do you need me to move?
And I said this, I I think it was my Genesis 18 to 19 live stream. Um it's just I think the leaders know it's all crap and they do it anyway because it's just easy money, if that makes any sense. Uh Fifth,
Yeah.
uh
Hello.
why do you believe?
Why do I believe? Well, I mean, it to me it rings true. Uh, you know, I guess like anybody else, I wasn't Christian at the time, and I had just heard some things, and I said, "Oh, well, that makes a lot of sense." And come to realize that the Bible is true. I've put it to the test. I mean, the simplest way I can say it is it just rings true to me. It makes sense. A lot of the things it talks about, I can see in our real world. So yeah,
You going to take that?
I take the Bible as truth.
Okay. So may I ask what things?
Well, you can look at like the people groups, like how the people groups that we have today,
Mhm.
how they kind of came into being through Genesis and whatnot.
But
You can
how can all those people groups come from two people?
they don't they don't come from two people.
Then what is your take on Genesis?
Well, in Genesis chapter 1, you have the creation of mankind,
Correct.
meaning many different people all over the world. I even think your NIV is going to say that. It's going to say mankind in Genesis chapter 1. Whereas in chapter 2, you have the forming of one man.
Okay, I can see that.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
yeah, totally. I can see that.
Yeah. Um,
Um but then you've got the problem of the flood. And I assume you take the flood as a literal thing.
yeah. Yeah. I take the flood as a literal thing. I mean, I take it literal, but a lot of these things also have triple, double meanings to it. There's more meaning to it than just a flood. There's a lot of symbolism and what you might call prophecy attached to it. Stories you'll see later on in different books kind of mimic the same thing.
Easy.
Uh, like the flood story is an end times story as well, but it was also a literal flood. Now, I know there's the big issue, and it's a big subject, and I'm no expert on the flood, but if I had to tell you, well, is this a worldwide flood? No, it is not a worldwide flood. Uh, did the whole world get wet? Probably, yeah. Was all the water to the top of the mountains? No. Was it was done to fix a problem that was happening? Um,
I could think of a lot nicer way to fix that problem, but I digress.
yeah, yeah.
Well, the Jehovah's Witnesses believe
They should
that
have done. Yeah, go ahead.
the Jehovah's Witnesses believe that it really happened and Everest was covered. And if you go back to my Noah, um, I did a video about that. And
See, Lisa, I just think back to when I was a little girl and the JWs came out with this book. I think it was something like My Book of Bible Stories. And there was a picture that they had, and it was like I guess a mountaintop. The waters were rising, and there was a bunch of people clinging to things so they wouldn't drown. And among them was a baby in its mother's arms. And even as a 10-year-old girl, I thought, this is so wrong. So
Yeah.
I have a lot of issues with that, but I don't want to.
Lloyd Evans called it my book of Bible horrors.
Horrors, yes. Yeah, I have a lot of issues with that. I mean, I look at it this way. Even though there's a lot of not good things in the world, there's a heck of a lot more, much better people in this world than there are not. So I try to dwell on that. I see how people are trying to help each other, but of course, they're always going to show the bad things. The people that do wrong, um, they get more press. But there's a
Right.
lot more good people out there, and that's the way I look at it. And if the world were to end tomorrow, then I would rather go than be ruled by someone who would just do that to everybody.
Right. Yeah. I would too. Jay, why don't you come in and ask that question yourself?
Oh, are you talking to someone on the live feed,
I'm
Lisa?
talking to Jay Pasek.
I feel like I'm taking up a lot of your time too. I should probably get out of here so someone else can
No,
have a turn.
no, you're fine. I think there's plenty of space in here. Not sure how many spaces, but I think there's like 9.
I didn't even know if this was going to work. I'm surprised I'm even on here. Where's your sister? Come on, let's go find Libby.
Yeah, I'm surprised it worked too because I'm like, oh, I don't even know how to use this thing.
Yeah.
So, Jay, you want to come in?
Come on.
Oh, there you are. Okay, so
Go find Libby. Come on.
there you go.
Yeah, if you're
Where's
are you
Libby?
paying
Where is she?
Excuse me?
are you
There she
paying
is.
for it? Are you paying for StreamYard? Or are you paying the $20 a month or $25 a month?
No.
Yeah, then you have room for 6.
Okay. Okay, so go ahead and ask your question to Fifth.
Oh, it was just what he talked about, because what it says in the Bible about the flood, and this is where the debate actually happens. Is the flood continued 40 days on the earth. The waters increased and bore up at the ark and rose high above the earth. The waters prevailed and increased greatly on the earth, and the ark floated on the face of the waters. And the waters prevailed so mightily on the earth that all the high mountains under the whole heaven were covered.
Yeah, I can't go through every verse and explain it. I mean, you know that the earth means ground, right?
Well, yeah, because there was ground under the oceans even at that time.
No, but I'm saying the word earth. When you say when you see the word earth, lowercase earth, we're not talking the planet. We're talking the ground, the dirt, the earth.
I think you're missing the bigger part where it says the waters prevailed so mightily on the earth that all of the
Right,
high mountains under the whole heaven
right,
were covered.
right. Well, I mean, I'm just starting from where I can start. I'm just saying, to start, when you say earth, we're talking ground. We're not talking the
But I'm
planet.
talking about I'm talking
No, I
about
understand.
all the
We haven't
waters.
gotten there yet.
No, you're talking about all the high mountains under the whole of heaven were covered.
Oh, easy.
Right, Jay, do you understand I haven't gotten to that part? I'm just talking about the word earth.
But
That's all
I
I'm
don't know
saying.
why you want to focus on the word earth when we're talking about
Well,
all
I'm
the
trying
waters
so you
covered.
can understand that when it says earth, it's ground. Doesn't mean the planet. That's my only point. Now we'll go to your next point. Now, what verse are you talking about?
It's 19. And the mountain and the waters prevailed so mightily on the earth that all of the high mountains under the whole heaven were covered.
Yeah. Okay.
The waters prevailed above the mountains, covering them 15 cubits deep. And all flesh died that moved on the earth, birds, livestock, beasts, all swarming creatures that swarm on the earth, and all mankind.
Okay, Jay, if I could just say something right quick. I don't mind you interrogating the fifth trumpet. I just want you to be respectful. I want this to be a safe place for everybody. Christians, atheists, Buddhists,
Yeah, I
Hindus,
was just
whoever.
yeah, I was just getting confused why he was because even the mountains are made of earth. So
Okay,
he was
yeah. So
focusing seemed to be
I'm
kind of a little bit of a pedantic argument to focus on the nuance of earth when there's verse 19 that just basically lays
Jay.
out
Jay.
specifically states all of these mountains under all of heaven were covered. That's all.
Okay. Well, when the water surged even higher on the earth, right? When the water surged even higher on the ground, not the planet, all the high mountains under the whole sky were covered. So if you had a flood, and where I'm going to say this happened was the Turin Basin of China. The mountains in that area may very well have been covered. I can't.
I'm back.
I wasn't there. I can
I,
only go by what's written.
okay, Fifth. I
Uh,
don't. I don't think Jay was here when you said that. Fifth does not believe it was a worldwide flood, Jay.
Sure, but now I'm wondering exactly why Noah would need to make an ark and why he would need to pile up animals into an ark if they could
well,
just
because
move.
well, okay, you could, yeah. I mean, if you get into that, it's like, why didn't he just do anything? I mean, you can make up your own story, but that's I would say it was because of the region, to save the animals, the people in the region.
The fifth trumpet. Have you ever heard of a guy named Atrahasis?
No.
Have you ever heard of the Epic of Gilgamesh?
Yes.
Atrahasis is in the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Hmm.
Atrahasis is the Sumerian name for Noah. So the Noah story actually comes from the Epic of Gilgamesh. The when the Hebrews were writing, they just decided they were going to make it bigger and badder than the Sumerians did. Does that make sense?
Well, no, to me it doesn't make sense. I understand that that's the traditional what people like to say. Um, but from my point of view, I wouldn't quite take it that way. I'm no expert on the story of Gilgamesh. I don't do history. I can, from my point of view, the biblical account would be the truthful account, and the fact that there is another account of it doesn't seem out of the ordinary to me.
Well, the other another thing is that if you're saying that this was a localized flood
Right.
and it could cover the mountains 15 cubits deep,
Okay.
how
Yeah.
is that going to happen in a localized area if there's still places where water can go?
Well, I would have to say that we're dealing with what Lisa was saying earlier. Some of the words and our meanings don't always line up. So, yeah, I can see your point. How would a mountain be covered if the top of the mountain, I can't get into the details like that. I
Hmm.
can only tell you from my point of view, this is not a worldwide flood. This is a local, basically, flood. I'm trying to answer your questions as
No,
honestly
that's
as I
fine.
can.
That's fine. I don't have any. There's no real dog in that fight except for just I don't really have a dog in the fight. Just that I find it interesting that there are Christians who are I was raised believing that it was a worldwide flood based on what those verses are stating,
Yeah, yeah,
because everything that drew breath on land died.
yeah. In that area, sure, I wouldn't doubt that. But I mean, and I understand your point. Why do people say it's a worldwide flood? Why do people say all kinds of things? There's a lot of bad information out there. There's a lot of confusion out there, and I think you're right about that. So it is a little confusing to get to the truth, but I think if you want to, you can find it. All I can say is what I've been lucky enough to be able to sift through these things and find what I consider to be valid and not a problem. But can I explain every verse? Probably not. No.
Well, you do because the other thing is that you do understand that these scriptures weren't written for these people to actually understand that God.
They what? Say it again.
There was no Bible scriptures written for these people to believe in this deity. Noah believed in this God before there was ever scripture written about Noah believing in that God. There was no Bible for these people
Sure,
that were
sure.
convinced of these specific deities or deity.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
Noah, as the Noah in the Bible, never existed. Atrahasis, maybe, but the Noah of the Bible, no. We don't have any concrete evidence for anything in the Bible happening until, at the very earliest, King Saul. And that's
That's
in my Emergence of Israel
yeah.
series.
I think there's some evidence for Daniel possibly,
Uh,
but I'm not. I haven't gotten into that. I haven't gotten into that too much. I know my brother knows more about that, and he's talked to Dr. Josh about that. But I think
right.
there's some evidence for Daniel, but that's just but I don't know if it's necessarily like there's some archaeological evidence, but I think they're mostly doing comparative analysis based on the writings. So
Well, Daniel was written far later than it purports to have been written.
yeah, parts of Daniel. Yeah,
In fact,
yep.
most of the Bible was written long after it says it was written. So, you know, not meaning to gang up on you, Fifth.
Not a problem. I mean, like I said, I'm usually able to sift through it and find something valid. But I mean, it's true. History is a tricky subject because well, honestly, we were not there. I mean, if I could see it with my own eyes, it'd be different. But to go back in time and try to figure out what happened, I mean, I don't see how that's possible.
But there wouldn't be any issue with somebody believing this to not be the case.
What?
But there wouldn't be any issue with someone believing this to not be the case. This would be an inconsequential thing. Is that what you think?
No, I see. Yeah, it goes both ways, but I would still take the same position. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, I mean, how am I really supposed to know? I can only take the biblical account.
Well, yeah, I'm going more on the belief aspect of the Bible, but would this be considered a consequential belief or an inconsequential belief? Is it basically essential to hold to this or not?
Well, if you believe the Bible, I mean, you kind of have to take the whole thing. I mean, like Lisa was asking me before, why do I believe? Well, I started to believe one part, and it's like, well, wait a minute. If one part is true, then you got to take the whole thing.
No, that's actually kind of a fallacious thing because each claim can be claims can be all claims can be independently looked at. Just because the Bible gets this one claim correct doesn't mean that all claims are necessarily correct. That's a bandwagon fallacy. It's kind of a bandwagon fallacy,
Okay.
right? It's like if I were reading a textbook and three-quarters of the way through the textbook I find a typo, I find a mistake that it's made because it wasn't updated with the latest scientific information about something, and then I just dismiss the whole book because it got one thing wrong. Logically, that would work the same way with the Bible.
Well, I mean,
I
it's
can't
kind of
dismiss. I don't dismiss everything. You don't just dismiss everything. You look at every claim independently. It's like the idea of believing that Jesus rose from the dead. That makes him. Then they take the logical leap that he must be a god because he rose from the dead. Those are actually two independent claims. It could be the case that Jesus rose from the dead, but it still may not be the case that Jesus was the actual God itself.
okay.
Those are in two independent things.
The Fifth Trumpet, have you heard of
Mhm.
Pelagia?
I've heard that name. He's a YouTube channel, right?
Yes. He's
Yeah.
very, very good. I'm not encouraging you to give up your faith, but no, I'm not.
Okay.
I would never do that. Um, but I would encourage you to maybe go over to his channel.
Yeah.
He's very
Well,
reasonable.
yeah.
He does a lot of Ken Ham stuff.
Well, Lisa, I'll be honest. I have seen the whole reason I'm even on the YouTube thing is because I started watching the Bible debunking videos. So I have no problem watching these videos and sifting through it and making sense of it. That particular channel, if I thought he was valid, I would be watching him. I don't take him seriously from based on what I've heard. I don't mean to insult the guy. That's just my opinion. There are other people that I will listen to. I'm subscribed to several, Bible debunking people. I listen to what they have to say, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with it. But yeah,
You do understand he was a minister for a while.
okay, that's fine.
Paul was?
Yeah,
Pelosia?
yeah,
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah. He was a Mennonite, and he was I think, a
Oh, those
youth
filthy heathens.
minister. Yeah, he was a youth minister, I think, for a while.
I've
And
listened to all of them.
then,
I've listened to very many of them. I'm listening to Jay Pasek right now. I'm just saying, I've seen a lot of these, Bible debunking channels.
I don't do Bible debunking.
Okay.
I just try to present the facts. Now, with the series that I'm going through right now, going through the Bible, like chapter by chapter, starting with Genesis, that is a little more lighthearted, but for the most part, I do more serious educational stuff. So, you
Yeah, no,
know,
that's why I tuned into your video. I was watching you go through 18 and 19. I thought it was, I got your very honest opinion about it.
yeah, yeah. So, and I'm a former Christian, so I definitely see where you're coming from, and I understand where a lot of Christians are coming from. It's just that I don't believe it anymore.
Yeah, well, that's fine. There's no requirement. Are
So, am I going to go to hell?
you going to go to hell? Uh, well,
I mean, I don't
not.
believe in hell, but
Yeah, no. Just in a word, no. You're not going to hell. You're not going to burn forever in a fiery pit of hell. No, you're the lake of fire. Like, if you want to use analogies, like many analogies that are used, you know, when you put a log on the fire, the log goes away. When a house catches on fire, the house is gone. So it's just an analogy, like your name is blotted out of the book of life. It just means you're not there anymore. So this idea of burning in hell forever is laughable. And I feel sorry for people who believe it. Because biblically, I don't think it's accurate. So again, I don't want to say the wrong thing. And Tangelo's here, so I'll let you guys have your conversation.
oh no, Fitz, you can say. Uh, no, like I said, as long as you're respectful, you
Yeah.
can't say anything wrong on this channel.
Okay.
We're just talking.
Hmm.
Hey, Otangelo.
Yes, hello, everyone. Yeah.
This I'm just this is probably the only open room I'm gonna do. Uh, just one rule that I have: stay respectful. You know, otherwise, you can say anything. But I wanted to ask you about your story, Otangelo.
Mm, just a moment. I'm ending to eat my um,
Well, Lisa, I'll let you get
dessert.
back to the Ortangelo conversation. I just wanted to check in. I'm going to go about my business. It was nice talking to you. You can
Thanks,
have me
Tiff.
if you want to have me as a guest or whatever. I'll come on and talk to you again if you want, but it's up to you.
Sure. See you later.
Okay, bye.
See if
Yeah, bye, Jay.
yeah, I think I posted something in your private chat here on StreamYard that's called the principle of belief conservation. I brought this up to a couple Christian believers, especially like Jesus is Lord, who basically told someone that if they could find it's a weird position that he has. If somebody could find a historical inaccuracy in the Bible, he would just give up Christianity altogether.
It's riddled with inaccuracies.
Yeah, and he was on Digital Gnosis's channel a couple days ago. It was a respectful conversation, but he did not do so well in there. because what I thought was interesting was Jill brought up this fact that he brought up or Pine Creek. I don't know. Are you familiar with Pine Creek?
No.
Okay.
Oh, I
Doug,
would love to talk to that guy.
yeah, Doug Pine Creek, or yeah, Doug from Pine Creek. But anyway, he asked Jill a question. He said, he was basically asking him, what's your primary reason for believing in the God of the Bible? And Jill said, well, other than my personal experience with the Holy Spirit, the historical accuracy of the Bible. And then Pine Creek asked him, he said, okay, so what would happen if we found a historical error in the Bible? What would you do? And he said, I would give up Christianity. Was basically what he was saying. I'm paraphrasing a little bit for brevity, but he basically
Right.
said he would just give up Christianity if somebody could find an error in the Bible. And I thought that was odd because, remember, I thought it was odd because Jill said, other than my personal experience with the Holy Spirit. So when he answered the question in that way, I was like, now it seemed like he just kind of dismissed that personal experience that he had with the Holy Spirit, as though the Bible holds over his personal experience with the Holy Spirit. I thought
Right.
that was pretty telling. But yeah, it's an interesting conversation. Jill did not. I don't think Jill did as well as he thought he did. But either way,
I don't really watch Jill. He's not. Uh, he's not as bad as Smokey Saint, but he's, in my opinion, at least, he's of that ilk. But anyway, Otangelo, so you're Swiss, correct?
Yes, I am Swiss and Italian. I have two passports, two nationalities.
Oh, okay, so you speak Italian, I'm guessing?
Yes.
So, you asked me to try to explain this to you in Knox room, and so I'm gonna try to explain it now. Um, you're you should probably try to get papers in your first language. I don't know whether your first language is Italian or German or.
Well, I would like to say something to you, Lisa, which maybe sounds a little bit rude, okay?
Go ahead.
But I think it is enormously preposterous of your part to criticizing me in our first encounter that I don't understand what I am saying, when you have absolutely no clue about me, about my history, about my knowledge, about my studies, basically about everything of me.
Okay, I accept that. I accept that you feel that way. The problem is that something gets lost in translation, and I'm assuming because you have an accent that English is not your first language. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So maybe uh, because things do get lost in translation, maybe you should try to get stuff in your native tongue.
Well, there is very little scientific literature. Most peer-reviewed science papers, they are in English. But rather than giving me that kind of suggestions, I would like to come straight to the point, and I would appreciate if you could point out why you have done that kind of observation.
Yeah. Because when you were when you were throwing out quotes, um, when I went to college, and I didn't, I graduated from college in 2012. So when I went to college, if I had just thrown out quotes in my papers, I would have gotten a failing grade. Um, I, I shouldn't have been so hard on you, and I'm sorry about that. But my point, I the point that I was trying to make was, um, don't quote things, put them in your own words, and that's where your native language comes in. Because if you read papers in your native language, it might help you better put things in your own words. I don't know because I only know English. So,
Well, Lisa, first of all, when I quote someone else, then I do it because if it is from an expert source or from someone with authority, then what I am saying has more authority rather than when I say it just by myself. And when I quote something, then I don't quote it because I don't understand. I quote what I actually do understand. And if it is necessary, I can perfectly formulate what I'm quoting in my own words. So that's why I am still wondering why you have jumped to the conclusion that based on the fact that I did quote someone else, that I did not understand what I was quoting. So that's why I repeat and ask you again, can you point out why you feel or think that what I quoted I did not understand?
uh, yeah, when Leo was talking to you, you quoted something that basically reinforced what he was saying, and it probably wasn't fair of me because that was the only time that I heard you give a quote that reinforced what somebody else was saying, somebody, not on your side was saying. But I, Marianne, it's on the Rages channel. Um, but it's, um, I understand that you want to quote because these are authorities, but at the same time, you kind of want to, if all you do is quote, okay, if all you do is quote, then it looks to people like me and like Leo and like Jay, okay, it looks to us like you don't understand. So if you could paraphrase it, if you could put it in your own words, and then link whatever it is in the chat, in the private chat, that would go a that would serve you better. Does that make sense? Otangelo? Otangelo?
Oh, sorry, I had my mic shut up. First of all, Lisa, I would like to know, do you have an education? It doesn't have to be formal. It can just be by books or by internet or so, or self-taught. Do you have an understanding on biology and information theory?
Uh, Not really on information theory.
Okay, so that was essentially what we were talking about with Leo, if I remember correctly. And you made a claim which I refuted precisely by quoting a science paper of Royal Society. And it was that DNA stores information. And you said, oh, no, that is not true. And then I quoted from a Royal Society paper just to demonstrate you that what authoritative peer-reviewed papers say back up what I was saying. And so that's why I'm asking you, and I am
Okay.
still not getting why you made that observation and, in a certain sense, accusation that I don't understand what I am quoting, because I am pretty sure that I pretty well understand um, information theory and
Okay.
biology.
Well, that's fair. Okay, so let me explain. The guy you were quoting is the guy that came up with information theory.
Oh, you refer to Shannon, to, okay, oh no, to Jockey, okay.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, the person who comes up with the theory, that's going to be their pet theory. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So, do you think that I ought to just take somebody who came up with the theory and somebody who that is his pet theory? Do you think that I should just take his word on it?
Well, what makes you think that I just took his word on it and that I didn't actually investigate the topic and the subject in question?
I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about me. Do you think that I should take his word on it?
If he is an authority, yes.
If it is his pet theory?
Well, it is, if the person that is being quoted is an authority on the subject, then it is perfectly justified to quote that person.
Yes, but what I'm saying is, uh, what's his face actually proposed the theory. So, of course, he's going to say, I like this theory because it's my theory. Does
Yes,
that
but
make
you
sense?
cannot. Yes, but you cannot jump automatically to the conclusion that because it is his pet theory that he is wrong.
No, but it has been proven wrong.
Okay,
It
so now
hasn't
we are
been proven,
okay.
it
So
hasn't
now we
been
are
proven
coming.
wrong, but because you can't, science can't prove stuff wrong. Um, it has been proven not right.
So now we are coming again to the crux of the issue that you took on me, that you said literally, and I remember that quite clearly, that DNA does not store information. Is that your claim?
That is correct.
Okay. So I did send you
Information.
I did send you 3 links from my library. Did you have time to have a look on these links?
I had a migraine.
Oh, okay.
Um, so I'm not pushing you off. I am gonna read them.
No,
Uh,
no problem. No
but
problem. I'm just asking you to know if you have a basis upon which we can have this conversation. But since you say that you did not read the links, so I did ask you at that chat there if you can point out what the function is of DNA. So I think it would be appropriate to make that question again. Can you answer that question, Lisa? What is the function of DNA?
yes, it is twofold. One, like I said earlier, it is to replicate itself. But number two, it is to give quote unquote instructions, and I put that in quotes, and I'll get back to that in a minute, to the RNA for the RNA to do what it needs to do. Now, going back to the quotes, we think in concrete ways. Cells contain biochemicals. And so biochemicals give signals. They don't they don't give instructions, they don't give information, they give signals to each other. And I think that's kind of, I, I think, I'm not sure, but since English isn't your first language, and I'm not, you
No,
know,
I understand you perfectly. You can say whatever you want, and if I don't understand a word, I will ask you.
no, I'm not blaming you that English is not your first language. This is why I was saying you might want to look it up in.
It's not necessary because I am very familiar with the terms also in biology. So if there is some word which I don't understand, you don't have to worry. I will ask you. Okay.
Okay. So, when they're, we tend to think in very concrete ways, but you can't take those concrete ways that we think and push them onto the biochemicals that make up our cells. Does that make sense?
Of course, yes.
Okay. So when they say information, they say information because information is what we understand. It's not information in the sense that it's some kind of a code or anything. It's information in the sense that these are biochemicals that make the cell do what it's supposed to do. And that's where I think we're having the disconnect here.
Would you like me to answer to your point?
Yes, please.
Okay. Your terminology is, in my understanding, very vague. It is not precise. Okay. Um, why is the nomenclature genetic code? Why do they talk about a genetic code?
Because that's the way we think. We don't have we don't have another word for it. And that's how we think, but it's not a code in the strictest sense of the word. Does that make sense?
No, it doesn't make sense.
Okay. Um so let me give an example. Um we have four amino acids, adenine, cytosine, uh
Okay, Lisa, you are demonstrating that you don't have a good understanding here because adenine, cytosine, uracil, and thymine, these are not amino acids, these are nucleotides, okay, which make
thank,
RNA and DNA.
thank you.
And
I am sorry, nucleotides. Yes,
okay,
I had a
so
brain fart there. So
okay,
nucleotides,
so
okay?
would you like me that I explain to you in my words what is happening here?
Um Snuffy Wufficus, I'll get back to you, Otangelo. Just let me read this. Snuffy Wufficus says DNA is an ongoing chemical reaction, which it is, okay? Not a code. And I think, like I said, I think that's where our disconnect is coming from. You know, you're thinking of it as a literal code, and that's not what it is, because it's biochemicals, and biochemicals
Okay,
don't really
okay,
have codes. Does that make sense?
let me explain what happens here. Um, DNA is transcribed into messenger RNA,
Correct.
and messenger RNA is translated and in the ribosome to make amino acid polymerization. And in the end, you have proteins. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So You have a genetic code which is formed by 64 codons, which are triplet nucleotides. 3 nucleotides, they form one codon, and you have in total 61 codons and 3 stop signs, in total 64, and they are assigned to 20 amino acids.
Yes,
Okay?
I do understand that.
Okay, so that assignment is the cipher, or what we call the genetic code. Okay, that is in a literal sense an assignment of codons of triplet nucleotides to an amino acid, and that is in a literal sense a code.
Biochemicals cannot be codes.
You're not understanding, Lisa.
Just a minute, Otangelo. Just a minute. I'll get back with you. Randolph, would you come in here, please? Like I said, we think in literal ways. That's just the way we think. So when we're talking about these complex things, we have to dumb it down so our brains can understand it. Does that make sense?
What I said to you is literally what happens, Lisa. You have, for example, you. This is a triplet codon, 3 nucleotides, uracil, and they code for phenylalanine amino acid. And you have UAA, that is a stop sign. That is encoding a stop sign. And you have, for example, UGG, that encodes tryptophan, that is assigned to tryptophan. So what means that? If you have a messenger RNA, which is the triplet codon uracil, guanine, 3 nucleotides, then the machinery in the ribosome understands that it has to add a tryptophan in the tRNA, which is added to the polymerization of the amino acid chain. So we have here a literal assignment of codons to amino acids. This is not something metaphorical, it is literal. This is what actually happens in the ribosome. This is basic biology.
Hello.
Hi, Randolph.
Hi, Lisa. Hi, Otangelo.
Yes. Hello, Randolph.
We've spoken before.
Yeah, I am trying. Maybe I'm not explaining this right.
I'll say that I'm not an expert in this area of science for sure. My area is more in the computer programming end of things. If you want to call me a scientist by any stretch of the imagination, but it seems to me a lot of theists think of DNA as some kind of computer program code, and to me that doesn't seem to be the case, because programming functions are actually created by people, and the whole language is designed, and then there's functions added on top of the language. There's multiple layers of stuff going on there. What I see with my understanding of what's going on with the DNA is we're assigning letters and different codes to it so that we can more easily express it in scientific communication and analyze what's going on. I find, that the idea that it's being translated doesn't sit well with me either, because that implies that there's some kind of meaning before the translation, and then a meaning afterwards that can be understood by, say, a different group of people, or a different group somehow. And this just doesn't sit well with me, as it is not at all consistent with what I learned in elementary school and high school and science class, just the basics of all this stuff. Again, I'm not an expert in this, I'll say right away, but I hope this is helpful, Lisa.
It's fine. You know, I have gone through a lot of psychology, and that includes a lot of biology. But you
Mhm.
know, when when trying to um, explain, like, I guess maybe I'm not explaining it right.
I don't have any issue with what you're explaining. So I just I think Otangelo, when Lisa made the comment about language, I think that I have noticed with because I am familiar with some other languages. It is a challenge, and although I'm not going to rule out the possibility that somebody can use a language that's not their first language perfectly competently, that's also quite possible and does happen a lot. And some of those people get jobs doing translation for a living, especially at places like the United Nations where they have to translate on the fly and get everything right all the time. It's tremendous pressure in my view, but some people are very, very good at it. And but I do think that there can be a lot of value in expressing one's ideas in native language as well, because and then maybe getting some other help with translation, just to make sure to check over translation, make sure that things are getting translated through properly. Because there is something that happens a lot with people where they'll learn something and then like a new language, and then they think they're conversing very well in it, but then they're actually not. And I've seen this happen with a lot of people from China, for example. They'll learn the language, they learn English, and their writing is usually quite good. And when they speak, they need to work on it because they're learning from other people's who English is not their first language, and there's accents and there's mispronunciations and whatnot. But one thing I've noticed in particular from China is that a lot of esoteric, unusual words are used. Now, the words are very fitting and quite accurate, but a lot of people don't understand them because they're unusual words. So how people go about translating things versus a native speaker, there can be differences and challenges there, and then wrong meanings can be assumed as a result of that. And I think that's what kind of Lisa was trying to suggest
Okay,
in hopes of
Randolph, I don't
helpful.
like to use words which I do not understand.
Oh yeah. No, I'm not
Okay,
criticizing you here. I'm
so
just trying
I
to
would.
explain what I think Lisa was
Okay,
getting.
so I would like to come to the point, and I can back up what I just explained to Lisa, quoting, okay, Wikipedia is not a scientific source. Many people avoid it, but I think what it writes in regards, what we read in regards of the genetic code is pretty pertinent. So it says basically what I just tried to explain to Lisa. I will read it here. The genetic code is the set of rules. Listen, a set of rules, okay? And I will straightforward say rules are made by rule makers, okay? Used by living cells to translate information encoded within genetic material, DNA or messenger RNA, sequences of nucleotide triplets or codons into proteins.
Okay, so
Do you agree with that?
most of it. The one point that I don't agree with is the part where you say rules are made by rule makers. So if we take a look at things like law of logic, laws of physics, laws of gravity, and different things like that, laws are not made by a lawmaker there. These are observed, and we're putting them into a form of these things. So there's no implication that that was created. And rules, it's exactly the same thing. We're observing how things function. Calling them rules is a colloquial thing that is just a very convenient way of saying this is how this stuff functions. This is how this stuff works and how it interacts. We're not saying that somebody sat down and created all these rules and now it all works this way. And that's the point of contention that I have with what you just read, with what you just said.
Okay, let me see if you agree with that.
But does this
Science,
make sense to you? Or do you think that all these laws of physics and whatnot and rules of how biology works and all
well,
this are actually
well,
created by something? thinking.
Well, I will come to the point to what we are talking about, and I will read it here to you and see
Okay, well, hang on.
if you agree with what I will say right
Well,
now.
you just asked me if I agree with you on this stuff, and I said I agree with mostly, and then I gave you an explanation for the point that I don't agree with you on.
But
And
you moved to another
so now
thing
I'm
about
asking you a
physical
question.
laws or so.
So I'm just asking you a quick question here. If this
Okay.
does that, I'm trying to understand what your approach is here. When you're saying rule made by a rule maker, are you thinking that those are rules that are created, or are you actually in agreement with me that this is just stuff that we've observed and it just happens to be reality works this way?
No, I disagree with you. Rules are always made by a rule maker, and I want to explain
Okay.
you why I think so. Okay.
Thanks for answering. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so assigning meaning of characters through a code system where symbols of one language are assigned to symbols of another language that mean the same requires a common agreement of meaning in order to establish communication through encoding, sending, and decoding. In semantics, syntax, and pragmatics are always set up by intelligence.
Okay. But what does that have to do with DNA?
Everything. We see that precisely in cells where information is encoded through the genetic code, which is a set of rules stored in DNA sequences of nucleotide triplets called codons. They are used to translate genetic information into amino acid polypeptide sequences, which make proteins, the molecular machines, the working horses of the cell. The assignment of codons, the triplet nucleotides to amino acids, must be pre-established by a mind. That's the key point. So, there is an assignment here. There is an assignment of 64 nucleotide triplet called codons to 20 amino acids. Why is that so? Why does that assignment exist? There is no physical necessity for that to happen or to occur or to exist.
And sometimes it doesn't happen. That's why you have, genetic diseases. Because sometimes
that's not the point, Lisa. That's entirely missing the point. That's entirely missing the point.
The problem is calling it rules as if the rules were created by somebody. They weren't. What it is
how do you know that?
It's an observed phenomenon, is what we do know. And the problem is that you're not connecting between that and some deity sitting down and creating those rules. Not necessarily sitting down, could have done it floating around for all we know, but the deity creating those rules. And that's the big gap that's missing here.
Why?
It seems to me that you're drawing a conclusion from something to you that seems like it had to have been designed, but in order to establish that, there's a lot missing in there. You need to fill in the void.
Yes, what is missing, Randolph?
The point between an observed phenomenon and where you're saying that phenomenon we've observed, the chemical reactions, is actually something that was designed, and I'm not convinced of that. That's the part that's missing.
So you are making basically an argument from incredulity here, but I will ask you something. Yes, I think you are. But
no. I'm saying that there's information missing. No. There's something missing. I'm saying more evidence is needed.
So let me ask. I will make an analogy here. Okay, if you have a translation book on your table from English to Chinese, and there you open the word chair in English. And then you go to look what the meaning is of chair in Chinese, and it is the word shizi. Is that an arbitrary made thing? That do we assign arbitrarily a meaning, the word, the letters to form that object that we sit down, the word chair? Is that something that we as humans and as intelligent beings that we assign that word to that object?
Well, language is a communication form, and so if we say English, we say chair, or Chinese say yizi, or whatever word we want to talk about. We have this common thing. It doesn't matter how many languages we have.
Yeah,
The
but
languages are something that develop.
that is something that we establish as intelligent beings, correct?
That's right.
Okay.
But language is arbitrary, and it
They
is
are
agreed upon.
arbitrary.
It's
Exactly.
arbitrary and
Yeah.
agreed upon by multiple people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I agree with
Whether
you.
DNA has labels in English or Chinese or any other language doesn't matter. DNA is still the DNA, and it's just from what I can see, and from as far as I know others can see, is that most others who work in the fields, is that it's just an observed phenomenon. So when you go to call it rules, some people will call it the rules of how it works. They'll lay out what they've observed works, what chemical reactions do what, and in what circumstances change things. And there's whole peer review processes behind some of this stuff to say, yes, this is how it works. That's one thing. But if you're going to go around and take that colloquial use of rules and say, aha, that means some deity created it, the big gap here is between that and actually the deity creating it. You need to demonstrate, if you're going to support that claim, you need to demonstrate that deity actually did that.
No, I don't.
Well, then I'm not going to believe it. Then you're not going to convince me.
So you are just,
Otangelo, why not?
Lisa, let me finish with Randolph, please. So you are basically using here incredulity. You are saying, oh, only if I see a deity doing it, then I believe it. If I don't see it, then I don't believe it. So that's incredulity.
Not what I said.
So let me ask you another question.
I said there's missing evidence. There's missing information, and you've not provided that. That's what I'm saying.
Well, my argument is that we know only of intelligence which can assign meaning to symbols and creating codes, where and we do not have any evidence that unguided random events can do the same.
If I was making the claim that it definitely was not a deity, then I would be making an argument from incredulity, but I'm not making that claim. I'm just saying I'm not convinced by your claim. I am going with what is known and what has been observed. I'm not making any further claims for or against what you're saying. So it's not an argument from incredulity.
Okay.
I want to make that abundantly clear.
Okay, so is it observed, and I will read here again, that assigning meaning of characters through a code system where symbols of one language are assigned to symbols of another language that mean the same requires a common agreement of meaning in order to establish communication. That common agreement of meaning is always a mental process. Do you agree with that?
We can observe it after the fact, though, too. It's not necessary to have that agreement. For example, most languages, nearly all languages, have numbers in them. And so if we can count quantities in these different languages, we don't actually have to know anything about those other languages or have any conscious agreement on those things to understand that there are 3 items here being shown on my hand, 3 fingers, 3 digits. And if I go in Chinese, I can show that, and someone in Chinese can say, oh, that's 3. And there's no translation known at this time, but there's agreement there as a matter of consequence. So it doesn't actually need to be conscious. Now, later on, people translate and figure out the similarities and say, that means in English 3 and in Chinese san, they both mean 3. But
that's my point. You need
after the fact that it didn't have to be agreed on ahead of time. But if it's agreed upon ahead of time, that's fine too. Languages can develop that way. So I'm saying both are possible.
Well, what I am saying is that if you want to have a translation book, then you need to have a previous common agreement of the meaning of the symbols and the words that you are using to assign the chair to them. That is so we have an agreement here, Randolph. So do we have any example where non-mental states can do that assignment?
Well, when it comes to human communications, that does require humans.
It requires intelligence, correct?
Yeah, human intelligence for human communications. I would agree.
Leave on side if the intelligence is human. That is not the relevant point here. The relevant point.
Marklar aliens and humans, sure. Okay,
the relevant point is that.
Yeah.
Okay, so the relevant point is that you need an intelligent action or mind in order to make that assignment and that common agreement of meaning.
Okay. Where are we
Okay.
going with this? Where are we
Okay.
going with this?
It is very relevant in order for you to understand my point, Randolph. Now, my second question is, if you do not have intelligence, is that assignment possible?
You'll have to give me an example so that I could make an assessment.
So if you see a book which was translated from English to Chinese, and you see the chair and Shizi in Chinese, and someone asks you, do you think it was required that intelligence did set up that code, that translation from chair to Shizi, or could random unguided natural events have established that rule of assignment of meaning?
Well, I can say that definitely those kinds of things are normally done with intelligence.
Good.
Now,
Great.
as far as randomness is concerned, because with randomness anything would be possible, then in that case I can't 100% rule it out. But there is a very high probability that it's not going to happen from randomness.
Great. Okay. So this is a perfect analogy to what we see in the translation of the codons to amino acids, where there is an assignment of 61 codons of triplet nucleotides to 20 amino acids. That is an assignment. And you have to explain the origin of that assignment. Why is that so? It doesn't have to be that way.
Otangelo, do you think that in the cell there are physical 61 codons, or physical this or physical that? Do you think all of this is physical in this tiny cell? Or
the point here, Lisa, is that there is you can forget for the moment that the nucleotides, that they are physical, but you have, for example, the sequence adenine, uracil, uracil, or adenine, uracil, guanine, which codes for MET. So the amino acids MET, or guanine, uracil, uracil codes for valine. There is an assignment here, which doesn't have to be. If there were just nucleotides floating around, why would they join to that sequence and then be assigned to valine? There is absolutely no physical necessity for this to occur. We only know of rulers establishing rules of assignment of meaning, and that's precisely what we have here. We have here an establishment of a rule where 61 codons are assigned to 20 amino acids, and natural unguided random events, they do not establish that kind of rules. That is the entire point.
Establishment of the rule, no. Observation of the phenomenon, how it works, and then putting it into the form of a rule or a law is what I'm seeing.
I am not saying
but how was that established, Randolph? You agreed with me perfectly, reasonably fine that the translation book of English to Chinese requires intelligence to establish the assignment and the rules of translation.
That's because being able to understand, comprehend language it requires intelligence.
Exactly. So what we have here is exactly the same situation where codons are assigned to amino acids. That's a rule.
That's an observed phenomenon.
It is observed. Yes, we have observed it. But the question is, how has this state of affairs emerged? You have
it's not language. That it's not a human language, that's for sure.
I'm not saying it is a human language.
No.
That's not what I am saying. But it is a language, and science papers, they confirm that.
Really?
That's
Yeah.
because that's what we understand, Otangelo. This goes back to what I was trying to tell you. And by the way, I'm sorry that you thought I was chewing you out in Knox room. I was not trying to chew you out. I was trying to give you some friendly advice, and I'm sorry if you took it the wrong way. So, that's my bad. I could have phrased it better, probably.
Lisa, no problem. You can see in the private chat, I'm just linking here science paper, the genetic language, grammar, semantics, and evolution. And they write here the genetic language is a collection of rules and regularities of genetic information, coding for genetic texts. It is defined by alphabet, grammar, collection of punctuation marks, and regulatory sites, semantics. So that's confirming what I am saying.
I'm not saying that those papers aren't saying what you say they're saying. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that because we have very concrete minds, we have to think in very concrete ways. And the ways in which we think that are concrete will be information and languages and whatnot, but these are not, because they are biochemicals and they are biochemical reactions.
Lisa,
So,
you are making a conflation here between hardware and software. DNA is hardware. It is a physical monomer, and amino acids, they are also physical. They are hardware, but it's like a computer code where you have the hard disk where you are storing information, and DNA stores literally codified instructional complex information. Why? Because the sequence of nucleotides or the codons, they code for the sequence of amino acids, which will then become functional proteins. So the sequence of the amino acids, this sequence must be very specific and correct. If you have the wrong sequence, you have no functionality of the proteins. They will not fold into 3D functional form. And it cannot be just any random sequence. The sequence must be specified and complex. It must be very specific in order to get functionality.
If what you're saying is true, then why do humans all not look the same, and why are we not all the same sex?
Well, of course, that the sequence determines the physiology, what we are becoming. If you change the sequence of the genome and the epigenetic information, then you will have a different biological form afterwards.
but if it's a code, how can it change?
If it's hardware.
Well, if it would not be able to change, then it would not be a code. It is the same as to write on a piece of paper. You have 26 alphabetic symbols upon which you can write millions of different phrases. And that's the same with the DNA language. You can use the four nucleotides.
It's not a language.
Yeah. I just provided you the science paper, the genetic language, grammar, semantics, and evolution. So you are actually
you provided a paper that describes a convention for using it with all sorts of different symbols. That's what you provided. So that doesn't mean that it is a language. It means that there is a language that's developed to describe these things. That's from looking at the abstract. That's what I gather from it. You're still not linking this to, I guess you're trying to link this to God?
Well, first we have to establish if it is a language, and then we can ask what the cause is of that, what we are talking about.
According to Christianity, all things are possible with God, so we may or may not need to do that.
Well, you are moving goalposts now. Let's keep to the topic.
No, I'm not moving goalposts. You're the one who's claiming a higher intelligence for this, are you not? Like a deity?
I believe that it is required to establish a language, and then it is also required intelligence to establish instructional information to make whatever you want to make.
Yeah, and I'm not convinced that that's the case. And from what I'm seeing is, and my understanding is, it looks like we're observing phenomenon, but that doesn't imply a creator.
Well, can you give me an example of a language that doesn't require intelligence to establish it?
No, because I'm not talking about language here. We're talking about DNA.
Yeah, but here, look here. Biologic systems and processes cannot be fully accounted for in terms of the principles and laws of physics and chemistry alone, but they require, in addition, the principles of semiotics, the science of symbols and signs, including linguistics. And G, that is the author of the paper, he continues, identifies 13 characteristics of human language, and DNA shares 10 of them. Cells edit DNA. They also communicate with each other and literally speak a language he called cellese, described as a self-organizing system of molecules, some of which encode, act as signs for, or trigger gene-directed cell processes.
Okay, Snuffy Wuffy Kisses is correct. We're just going in circles now. And you know, it's okay, Otangelo. You know, but the point I'm trying to make is we have to speak in terms that we understand. Okay?
Okay, so I will make an analogy to see if you understand what I mean. If you see on a cloud in the sky written, Jesus loves Lisa, and you have two options to explain what you see in the sky. One is that an airplane did you use some smoke to write that message in the cloud and form that cloud. And the other explanation would be that just a random natural phenomena or event did form that string of information which you can read. So you have to choose between the airplane which wrote that message or just a random occurrence by chance. Which do you think is the better explanation for the phenomena in question?
The highest probability will be that it was made with the help of a tool like an airplane. But again, I can't 100% rule out random occurrence.
Okay, what we are using here is abductive reasoning to the best explanation.
It doesn't mean that my conclusion is right, though.
Yeah, it does. We cannot prove if we have not seen the event, we cannot prove that indeed the airplane wrote that signs in the sky. But upon our previous experiences, we can come to a pretty secure conclusion that most probably it was written by an airplane, correct?
Okay, Otangelo. So let's stay with the cloud thing, okay? Let's stay with it.
So let me complete that. The chance to find a message written on the cloud in the sky, Jesus loves Lisa, randomly, is the same as DNA nucleotides creating their own software code, and upon it, writing an instructional complex algorithm to make a protein by random accident.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. Okay, but let's keep with the cloud analogy for now. Okay, so say you see a bunny rabbit in the clouds. Is that really a bunny rabbit? Or is that just your mind getting a picture of a bunny rabbit because that's what your brain is telling you?
Well, that would be not such a clear example as the one which I gave you,
Why not?
because we can make a very clear distinction between a string of a message, which we know by experience that must have been created by intelligence, by an airplane which wrote the letters with smoke in the sky, and we have pretty secure observations that a natural phenomena is extremely unlikely that it could and would have done that. And in regards of the bunny, which you said, we can imagine that eventually a cloud which formed some obtuse form of which resembles a bunny, that this could eventually be a natural phenomena.
So what you're saying is just making our point, Otangelo. Language is made, bunny rabbit not made.
Okay. So we agree that language is always made, correct?
That is correct.
And DNA is a language.
No, it isn't.
Human
It is.
languages are always made.
So do you have an example of any other language which is not human-made, which could have emerged randomly by non-intelligent mechanisms, by physical necessity?
Why should I have to provide that?
Well, then you have a case for naturalism emerging with the genetic code.
I can't make an assumption about how languages have arisen throughout the universe, throughout the cosmos. I can only deduce stuff based on what I know of humans.
Of intelligence, you mean? So we know that only intelligence can make languages and can make instructional information to make things. But we have no example of physical necessity or unguided, non-intelligent random events doing the same, correct?
Okay, Otangelo, let's try this another way. Okay. Have you heard of crop circles?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not trying to insult your intelligence. I'm just, trying to make sure that you understand what I'm talking about. Okay. So if you see a crop circle, are you going to assume that it is aliens, or are you going to assume it's an electromagnetic field, or are you going to assume that maybe somebody was writing something? Which of those three things sounds more reasonable to you?
That someone wrote it, right?
Electro EMF can do the same thing, Otangelo.
Yes, but my example has been in regards of language.
Yeah,
Because that is what we see in DNA. We see instructional complex information directing the making of proteins, which are in a literal sense molecular machines.
my point is, Otangelo, we will see a crop circle, which will look like an O. It looks like an O to us. We just think that way. It looks like an O. We're going to interpret it as an O, whether it's an O or not. But the fact of the matter is, EMF made it totally natural.
Okay.
Even though to us, it looks like an O.
Okay. So can you give me an example of absolutely natural phenomena or mechanisms producing a code system, a language, and then upon that language, writing an instructional complex blueprint, which then is used to make a machine?
What I just said, Otangelo, is we look at the electromagnetic field that is around this crop circle or whatever you want to call it, we look at it like an O or like a crop circle, but it is in all actuality only electromagnetic fields that are perfectly natural. But to us, we interpret it as an O.
Okay, let me ask you something. Would you agree with that sentence? If the analogy of two phenomena be very close and striking, while at the same time the cause of one is very obvious, it becomes scarcely possible to refuse to admit the action of an analogous cause in the other, tough, not so obvious itself.
Why would you assume something is obvious?
I will give you an example. I am a machine designer, okay? That is my
Okay.
profession. That is my profession.
Okay.
So when my boss comes to me and he says to me, Otangelo, I need that you sit on the drawing table, you invent a machine which can make X, which produces X, and you need to draw all the instructions with the sizes of that machine, with the individual parts, how they are assembled together, the materials that will be used, everything that is needed. You need to draw that you have to put that information on the drawing in order that then the drawing, that information can go to the factory, and the factory workers, they can read your drawing, your blueprint, and upon that instruction, they can make that machine with that function which provides X. Okay? Now, if you have a drawing providing the instructional information to make a machine, and you have no idea who made that drawing, but you have two possible explanations. One would be that intelligence made that drawing with specific purposes, and the second would be that just random, unguided, non-intelligent occurrences by random chance made that blueprint. Which of the two propositions do you think are a better explanation?
We know that only intelligence can provide blueprints.
Good,
That,
exactly. I
that,
agree with you. I
but
agree with you. So
DNA is not a blueprint.
I'm sorry, it is, and I will explain you why. The sequence of codons codes and instructs how to make the correct sequence of amino acids. And that correct sequence of amino acids will permit that the polymer will fold into a 3D form, which in the end will be functional. It will have a specific purpose as a molecular machine in the cell. Like, for example, ATP synthase is a protein which makes the energy currency of the cell, which is ATP. And you have topoisomerase proteins, and they have another specific function. They will disentangle DNA when the cell is dividing. And you have other molecular machines which have other specific functions, like, for example, importing rare metals inside of the cell, like molybdenum or other metals like iron or other elements which are required for the cell. So in biology, when a biologist sees a specific organelle or a protein, the first thing that he will ask is, what is the function of that protein? And he will always find a specific function for that protein. And in order for you to make that protein, it cannot be just any amino acid sequence. It has to be the right specific specified sequence. And that doesn't come by chance. It has to be the right instruction in the genome which instructs how these amino acids have to be polymerized and joined together. This is functional information. It is like a blueprint. Okay, so that relationship from the drawing table to the factory and then the make of a product based on that instruction is entirely intelligence based from the beginning to the end. And that is a perfect analogy to what we see inside of the cell.
Analogy is not the same as equality.
Well, I just did read in regards of that. I can read it again. If the analogy of two phenomena be very close and striking, while at the same time the cause of one is very obvious, it is very obvious for us that I, as a machine designer, I make blueprints and I use my intelligence to do so, it becomes scarcely possible to refuse to admit the action of an analogous cause in the other tough, not so obvious itself. So it is not obvious that the instructional information in the genome was made by intelligence. But since we have an analogous phenomena here, the blueprint which comes from the drawing table from me as a machine designer is analogous to the instructional information contained in the genome. So we can draw here a conclusion that most probably then the instructional information in the genome must have as well an intelligent cause.
That's the operative word, Otangelo. Metaphor. It's not what it is. This is what I've been trying to tell you.
And you're wrong, Lisa.
Okay.
I think that, are you familiar with the word pareidolia?
Yes, I think in the last chat someone talked about it, yes?
Yeah, I'm going to spell it and I'll put it in the chat as well. It's one that I think you need to look into, because I think that what it looks like to me is that that's what you're running into. It is spelled Pareidolia.
Okay.
And yeah, this is an important phenomenon.
But that has absolutely nothing to do with what I just tried to explain.
It has a lot to do. Hear me out. It is very simply defined here. Wikipedia gets this right. It says pareidolia is the tendency for incorrect perception of a stimulus as an object, pattern, or meaning known to the observer, such as seeing shapes in clouds, seeing faces in inanimate objects or abstract patterns, or hearing hidden messages in music, and so on. And what you're doing is you're seeing code in DNA that you think has been created, and you're drawing some kind of conclusion that it must have been because, I don't know, because of its complexity, because it reminds you it's very similar to language, the way you see it. And I think that pareidolia is a factor in this, and that's why you're seeing it this way.
So do you have an explanation of the alternative possibility, which would be that random chance would assemble the right instructional functional sequence of nucleotides to have a functional protein? I can give you an example.
You are now attempting to put the burden onto me, but I'm not the one who's claiming that DNA is like language. You are. So it's up to you to satisfy that burden. I don't carry the burden.
Well, Randolph, it's not me claiming that, it is science which is claiming that. And I've provided the relevant scientific papers, and you can look them up, and you can educate yourself in regards of that matter. This is a scientific established fact since the 50s, since DNA has been discovered.
A lot has changed since the 50s.
Well, it has not changed. The genetic code continues to be an assignment of codons to amino acids.
Let me clarify. The way the interactions work, the reactions and all this stuff, the chemical reactions hasn't changed as far as we can tell. But our understanding of it has improved over time. That's what has changed. Our understanding.
But the assignment of codons to amino acids has not changed. That is a fact. That's how the translation in the ribosome occurs.
And here's how it's very different from languages, because languages do change. They evolve with time. Words change, pronunciations change, accents develop, dialects develop, different languages offshoot from it and develop. We're not seeing that with DNA. Chemical reactions are chemical reactions. They're quite consistent.
But it's not simply chemical reaction, Randolph. There is an assignment of codons to amino acids, which is universal. The genetic code is universal. There are other codes as well, okay, but in the big scheme, in the great majority, what is used is the genetic code, and the assignment is a scientific fact. And the origin of the genetic code of that assignment requires an explanation. And if you want to posit natural phenomena to explain why that assignment has occurred, then, well, feel free to give an example if you have one where that can occur without intelligence.
Have you heard of the Urey Miller experiment?
It has nothing to do with what we are talking about, Lisa. The Urey Miller
Yes,
experiment.
it does.
No,
We
it
like to use
doesn't.
metaphors and draw similarities, so now we're doing the same thing here to try to get our points across.
Well, I mean, the Miller-Urey experiment, Lisa, was about trying to produce prebiotic amino acids. It has nothing to do with the genetic language.
Okay, we're not going to get anything done. Otangelo, I'd like you to stick around. Randolph, if you want to go, you can go.
I'm doing some work right now, so I'm happy to stick around. I like these things. I'm finding this quite a pleasant conversation. It's not what I'm used to, because a lot of time people fight. So it's been quite pleasant. I enjoy the tone of the discourse here.
Okay.
So thank you for hosting this. Yeah,
Yeah.
You're doing very well with it, I think, and so is Otangelo. It takes all parties involved to be able to have reasonable discourse. I do think that Otangelo, I am serious when I say that I think that you are pareidolia has an impact here on things, and that is something that I would suggest you look into, and even take a look at James Randi's examples. He gets into this and shows how a lot of stuff gets misunderstood. He's contributed a lot to the scientific method over the years. That's JamesRandi. I think it will be helpful to you to clear up your thinking, and I do think that if you are able to put this into some kind of a document where you're explaining how you arrive at it becoming an actual language, beyond just referencing that PubMed article that explains the conventions, because that's all that seems to be doing from my look at it, is that you could find yourself getting some awards in science if you can show that DNA really is a language.
Well, I have many articles here. I just quoted one, but I can give you many others which will say exactly the same. I will give you here the link. Yeah, I will put the link in the chat, and then you can look it up.
Yeah, put it in the public chat. I'm not so interested in that, because it just seems to me that pareidolia is the main factor here for how you're coming to those conclusions. So I would want to see something looked at and vetted more by experts who know all this, understand this field a lot better than I do, before I'd be willing to really spend much time looking into it. And I'm trying to be as polite as I can in saying this. I only have so much time in the day for things, and this is something that I really can't spend much time on.
Well, that's up to you, Randolph. I gave you the link. I will quote there many science papers, peer-reviewed papers, which say exactly the same thing of what I am saying. So feel free to research it.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Otangelo, let's take a 180 and get off of the science. I am interested in your story. Now, you said you were raised Catholic and you converted to evangelicalism. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Could you walk me through that?
Okay, my family is Italian. As I told you, I rose Catholic, and then when I was about 10 years old, I was not interested anymore in any kind of spiritual things and believing in God and so forth. And when I was about 15, I started to learn my profession. As I told you before, I'm a machine designer. And I went into depression and I looked for a way out. I didn't know what actually my mental state was. I didn't know about medical treatment and so forth. So for about 6 months, I was in that state and I didn't have a solution for it. And then I remembered that when I was a child, my mother was praying with me before sleeping. And I said, well, I will start to pray and maybe that helps. And I started to do that, and slowly my depression went away. And then a colleague at work, he invited me to go to an evangelical church. And I had a few questions about faith and the Bible and so forth. So I went there, made my questions, and they explained to me the gospel about salvation, that Jesus died on the cross for our sins, and that if I wanted to become a child of God, then I could make a prayer, repent of my sins, and become born again and become a believer and move to become a family member, an adopted child of God. So I did that prayer. I was 18 years old. And since then, I am on that way. It seems that Lisa is away for a few minutes.
Or she doesn't realize she's muted.
Oh yeah,
So
that's possible.
I didn't hear the
Okay.
full part of what you said because the first part I was dealing with something here.
Sorry. I don't have a problem with you believing because you had a personal experience. What I do have a problem with is you saying the science. Are you a young Earth creationist by chance?
Yeah, I am.
What I do have a problem with is people saying that science agrees with young Earth creationism because it just doesn't.
Well, Lisa, let me tell you something. I started as an old Earth creationist because my wife's father was a geologist. And then I moved to young Earth. Actually, for some time, for a few years, I remained agnostic in regards of that. And then I became a young Earth creationist. But independently of that, I can be an old Earther or a young Earther. That doesn't change my core beliefs in Christ. And so why is that such an important issue? I mean, the important issue, I think, to start with is the question if there is a creator or not. And that is, in my understanding, the topic that has to be debated and discussed with unbelievers. And only when an unbeliever becomes at least a deist and thinks that a creator is a better proposition than no creator, then it makes sense to move forward and ask about different religions, about different aspects of the Bible eventually, and so forth. So I don't see that as the main problem. And there are even theistic evolutionists which basically agree with almost everything which secularists propose in regards of the age of the earth, of evolution, of abiogenesis. But on top of that, they believe in the Christian God. So
it's not secularists who are suggesting that per se. It is scientists, because it is people who study the cosmology and whatnot who are in that field who are making those suggestions.
Whatever.
And
whatever.
some are theists, and a lot of them are atheists, and it's just some are secular and some are
so that's
ideas.
precisely for that reason.
To pin that on secularists is not a fair assessment.
No, okay, but I think the important point I think I was clear, which is that the the fact that I am an advocating for young Earth creationism is not the relevant point when we are talking about you being an atheist and I am being a theist. I think that is not the crux of the issue. The crux of the issue is you don't believe that on the bottom of reality there is a necessary intelligent creator, and I believe there is. And I think this is the first starting point. At least I use that methodology when I talk with atheists. I start with that question. That is like using a cumulative argument for God's existence, where the first question is there a God rather than not? That's the first question, which I think is relevant to debate.
Well, I used to be a Christian, and then I looked at the science, and I'm not saying that there is not a God. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we don't need a God, and that's something totally different.
Okay, so how can we explain our existence without a creator, Lisa?
Natural processes.
Okay, so we can go to the details. Do you have a topic where you think, oh, this is very strong evidence that natural processes can explain the phenomena in question much better than intelligence?
Genetic diseases. Why would there be genetic diseases if there's an intelligent designer out there?
Because of entropy, because of the fall at Eden.
You're assuming there was a fall in Eden.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me grant your premise that there is a God. That doesn't get us to the Bible God.
Correct.
How do you get to the Bible God?
Okay. The first thing that I would say is a breach from science to the God of the Bible is the Kalam cosmological argument.
That's not from the Bible. That actually came from Islam.
Irrelevant where it came from, but I
Well, you
think
made the
that
point, so I'm just responding to that point and providing some correction there. So,
well, I don't think
you
that
made
you
it
have.
relevant by bringing it up.
I don't think that you are correcting me here. This is just the observation that the universe had a beginning and therefore it had a cause. If that was proposed first by Islam or what else, that's not the relevant point.
Okay, yeah, but accuracy is pretty important here.
Okay, whatever. So
who says the universe had to have had a beginning?
there are many reasons. I can put you the link here and then you can look it up. There are many reasons to come to that conclusion. Okay. So I will put the link here in the side chat and also for everyone else, and then you guys can look it up.
Do you think there was one Big Bang or multiple bangs?
Even if there were multiple big bangs, there must have been a first Big Bang. So that is actually irrelevant, that question.
So do you think there can only be one first, or could it be that there's two or more that happen simultaneously?
No, we know only of the Big Bang of our universe. If there were other Big Bangs, if there were a cosmos which is bigger than our universe, or if there was a cyclic universe or whatever you want to propose, it had to have a beginning.
Had to.
Why?
That's an interesting assumption.
Why does it need a beginning?
There are three main points. First is the scientific observation, but there are also two philosophical reasons. I can also put that here, and you can look it up afterwards because it's a little bit a read.
Okay.
But the basic points is the second law of thermodynamics, and that we cannot have eternity by the addition of time sections of discrete time. So.
Okay, so let me ask you this. You think that by definition, the universe needed a beginning?
I believe that it had a beginning, yes.
Okay, then that's fine.
Oh, hang on. He's specifying that he believes it did. He doesn't
Lisa,
say it needs.
Lisa, if you like to make me a moderator, then I can share the links which I'm providing in the private chat and also in the public chat, so people can look it up afterwards.
You don't need moderator status for that.
Or you can put it in the side chat. That's it doesn't matter to me really.
Okay, so you believe the universe had to have a beginning.
Yes.
My question is, why does God get a pass?
Because God is not material, God is spirit, so he can exist in a timeless dimension beyond the physical universe.
There's nothing beyond space-time.
That's an assertion which you cannot back up.
It's an assertion that to say that there is something beyond it.
That's correct.
Well, I'm not making an absolute claim. Lisa did.
No, you are making an absolute claim because you are saying.
Okay, back it up. So back it up.
You're saying that your God doesn't need a beginning because he's outside of space and time. That is the definition of special pleading. You can't say that the universe had to have had a beginning and then say, but God doesn't have to have a beginning.
Okay, I will put the link here because these are talking points which I have here so many times. I'm putting it here in the private chat. So, but since it is not a long issue, I can answer to that as well. All lemons are citrus. Mushrooms are not citrus. This isn't special pleading because there is a category difference. God is not in the same category as the creation. God is in a league of his own. He is the great I am. Pointing out the obvious is not special pleading. The natural universe had a beginning. Therefore, the cause of the natural universe must be supernatural. And there is another point.
Why is that obvious? Why is that obvious?
Well, first of all, can something come from absolutely nothing?
This is my territory.
Go ahead, Randolph.
So, absolutely nothing.
Let me be clear, Randolph. I am using the philosophical absolutely nothing, which is the contrary of something.
Okay. And so that would mean that there are no rules or laws governing it, or anything that would be able to define with it.
Can something come from absolutely nothing? No laws, no rules, no virtual particles, absolutely nothing. The opposite of something. Can from absolutely something emerge?
Otangelo,
so now you're talking.
Nobody says that.
Now you're talking.
No, I'm just asking. I'm just asking.
You're asking about an unknown, and the thing about an unknown is we don't know if it can or can't.
No, because
by definition, you can define absolutely nothing. There's some rule.
By definition, absolutely nothing is the absence of anything.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody's claiming.
I mean, the absence of laws and rules.
That is the definition of absolutely nothing. It is the absence of anything.
Right. So that means that it could be the absence of all rules and laws as well. Then.
Yes.
Yeah. So in that case, you cannot logically rule out the possibility of something erupting from nothing.
Of course I can.
Oh, well, then you're applying a rule that that something can't erupt from it, and it's no longer absolutely nothing.
No, that is the ontological state of absolutely nothing. It is the contrary of something.
Nobody has ever asserted that something.
Lisa, I didn't say that you asserted it. I just made a question. Can something come from absolutely nothing? That is a yes or no question.
We just went over what it is. And I said that because there's absolutely no rules or laws, there's absolutely nothing, that it's not possible logically to then therefore state that something cannot erupt from absolutely nothing.
That's a logical fallacy, Randolph.
Okay. He needs to. Oh, there he is.
Hi, sorry about that. Yeah.
No, it's okay.
So I think I am being clear about that.
No,
I'm being clear too.
I made an entire I made an entire article on that because I called into the atheist experience, and then Matt Dillahunt, he said you need to show that nothing can't do something, and I said
That's
no,
right.
I don't.
You need to demonstrate that. And
No,
I just
I don't.
explained why logically you can't do that.
Okay, here is the link.
I don't need it.
Okay.
nobody
Whatever.
is saying. Okay, so you are confusing, and it's not just you. So I'm not picking on you. Okay,
Yeah, a lot of people do this.
You're confusing an absolute nothing with a philosophical nothing, and that's not. There cannot be nothing. Period.
That's not what I am asking. That's not the point, Lisa. I am just asking if something can emerge from absolutely nothing, from non-being. That's the entire question.
And I'm telling you, there cannot be an absolute nothing.
Yeah, okay, so great. So we are agreeing that something must have always existed, correct?
And why can't that thing be the singularity or the universe?
Because the universe is physical and started because if you have change, you have time, and you cannot have eternal regress in time.
Time is not the progenitor of change. Time is observed.
And we
Is there time if there is no observer?
Observation is irrelevant.
We invented time. Just like we invent everything else, because we need to understand this stuff. So we invented time. I mean, outside of us, there is no concept of time.
Yeah.
So if there is no observer and no intelligence, can there be time if there is no observer of time?
No.
Okay, you're regarding time as like a traversable dimension, like X, Y, and Z, forward, back, left, right, up, and down in our three-dimensional space, and I think that's an error because from my understanding of time is that we just observe change and we observe consistency and we can make predictions, but it's not an actual separate dimension.
So the question which you ask, Lisa, is a pertinent one. Can the singularity be eternal? And I would say no, and this is also not what science proposes. There are many science papers which say that the singularity, that the universe had a beginning. If you want, I can quote you some affirmatives of that.
I know there are scientists who say that the universe had a beginning, but
I would say the majority of the relevant, like according to Hawking, Einstein, Vilenkin, Penzias, Jastrow, Krauss, and the hundreds of other physicists, finite nature, time, space, and matter had a beginning. So that is basically a consensus in science, I would say.
Okay, but when you say nothing, we're not talking absolutely nothing. We're talking about a vacuum.
Oh no, he specified absolutely nothing earlier.
Yeah.
No, we're not talking about nothing.
Lisa, let me clarify that. My entire point was to say that there was never a state of absolutely nothing, because if that would have been the case, then we would not be here. So something must have always existed.
And the problem with your thinking is you're assuming that it's not possible for anything to erupt from absolutely nothing. So you're putting a rule on absolutely nothing, and it is therefore no longer absolutely nothing in that case. So your logic fails, and that's how.
I disagree, Randall.
Okay. Well, Otangelo, you can disagree. That's fine. I think I'm gonna go ahead and end this stream because we've been on here a while. Thanks for stopping by, Otangelo. Thanks for coming in, Randolph.
Hey, thanks for inviting me in, and I enjoyed talking about absolutely nothing. This was great.
All righty. Bye, guys.
Okay,
Good night,
bye-bye.
everyone.